Hello and welcome. We're so glad to have you with us today for the first in our Awaken Your Potential Leadership series, 10 Ways to Unlock Greatness, that we will be covering in 7 sessions. I'm your moderator, Jenny Alton, from the New York Small Business Development Center Central Office. Today, our topic is good intentions versus intentionally good, and your presenter is Chad Reyes, author and renowned coach of Lion's Pride Leadership. This webinar is brought to you by the New York Small Business Development Center network of 20 campus-based centers and many more outreach offices, which are located across New York State, along with the central office based in Albany. The NYSBDC is a U.S. Small Business Administration resource partner. Our free advising, education, research, and advocacy services are made possible by funding from the SBA, New York State, and our host campuses. And with that, I will now turn the time over to Chad.
Jenny, thank you so much. I'm so excited to spend some time with our SBDC friends across the state of New York, and I'm just going to share, this series, as you know, Jenny, and obviously this series is based off of my new book, which I just wrote, which is Awaken Your Potential, and we're gonna be going through different parts of the book over this series over the next 2 months, and I just want to start with this one question, okay? 5 frogs on a log, 4 decide to jump off, how many are left? Now, this is an IQ question, all right? So 5 frogs on a log, 4 decide to jump off, how many are left? Now, when I do this at conferences, when I do this at events, I typically hear the number 5, there's 4, there's 1. But really the truth of it is that there's 5 frogs still left on the log because 4 decided to jump off, but they actually didn't jump. They didn't jump off. And that's the difference between good intentions and being intentionally good. Intentionally good requires that you take action. And I'm going to share a little bit about my story. I think it'll help you connect as I unpack it. So similar to what Jenny was saying earlier, I'm going to do a teaching on good intentions versus intentionally good, and it's all around leadership and helping us reach our potential. And I'm hoping that it challenges you, because that is my goal today, is to add value to you, is to give you some stuff to really think about as you become the leader that you were designed to be. To do that, though, I just want to share something with you. When I was younger, I probably was 10 or 11 years old. I knew that one day I would be successful. But I didn't know how. And I'm sure many of you knew that you would be successful, because many of you that are on this call, I'm sure, are very successful. And but my journey was, I had uphill dreams with downhill habits. So I had these dreams of grandeur. I had these dreams of where I would be one day. And I remember I was 10 or 11 years old. I'm sitting on the couch with my mom, and I remember watching a movie. And that movie had a gentleman that was this businessman doing amazing things, buying companies. And I remember saying to my mom, I'm going to do that one day. But that was 11 years old. And I had uphill dreams, but my habits were downhill. They did not align to where I wanted to go. So for many years, I was very frustrated, very angry, very mad, because I wasn't getting to where I wanted to go. Because like I said, I had uphill dreams and downhill habits. So I want to just bring you on a little journey. My mom and my dad, I had 2 amazing parents. I really did. I had such amazing parents that, when some people say, like, I didn't have a parent that loved me, I can't understand that, because I did have amazing parents that loved me tremendously. But they didn't love each other, and they couldn't figure out how to make the marriage work, and they would fight, and there would be arguments. And a little context here is, my father was a Marine vet. He fought in the Vietnam War. And he had dealt with a lot of complications from the Vietnam War. He had PTSD. He had Agent Orange disease, which is it affects your nervous system. So my dad dealt with a lot of complications, had 60 surgeries in his lifetime after the Vietnam War. And one of the things was my father was he was an electrician, so he worked in the local 3 actually in New York City. And when he was when he was working, it was great, but there was times my dad couldn't work because physically he couldn't work. His hands were all distorted because of the Agent Orange disease from Vietnam. One day, my dad, I'm 14 years old, and my dad has a brain aneurysm. He's at a conference in Atlantic City, a baseball convention, and they had to fly him over he had a brain aneurysm, so they had to fly him over from New York City from Atlantic City to New York City in a helicopter. And, the doctor said, unfortunately, the chances were slim that he'd make it, but God protected him, and my dad made it through and was very, he didn't have any complications from that. But a few years later, my mom and my dad got divorced, and then eventually they foreclosed on the family home because my mom and dad couldn't afford the home. They went through all their life savings. They went through their retirement accounts, right? And then you fast forward, and I went to Binghamton, New York. I went to Binghamton University. So for you Binghamton people that are on the call, I appreciate you guys. I spent 4 years in Binghamton, and I had there's 2 important parts to this story. At 21 years old, I personally declared bankruptcy. I literally declared Chapter 7 bankruptcy. And the reason is that I wasn't dealing with all the hurt and issues that I had in the past. So how I dealt with it is I didn't do drugs and alcohol. I would spend and I would spend and I would spend. And for a while, I was able to spend and pay my payments until I couldn't anymore. So I declared Chapter 7 bankruptcy 4 days after my 21st birthday. And that then drove me into a couple of other bad decisions that I make. And I'll give you one of them is in October of 2001. So just think about this. We're talking about October of 2001. A friend of mine who's a police officer at the time, he says, "Hey, Chad, let's go get BB guns." All right, that sounds good. And in Binghamton, New York, you can go to Dick's Sporting Goods and buy BB guns. So we bought BB guns. We went to the back of his house. And we were shooting them on targets. And then he said, well, let's go to your house. We'll eat at your house. And my house had 15 people that were in it. Remember, I'm in college now. I had 15 people that were in it. And we were shooting the light on the light post, the street light in the street. And we're shooting and we're shooting and we're shooting it and we're missing it. Well, then the next day I go to school, I go to classes, I come back. And when I walk in, I see a red beam on my wall. Now picture this for a moment. Picture being in your room, 21 years old, red beam on the wall. You just went bankrupt about 9 months before that. Okay? I'm terrified. I drop down to the floor. I crawl out of the room and I call the cops. And I call the cops and I tell them about this. Well, check this out. I wound up calling the cops on the FBI. Crazy, right? You can't even make this stuff up. I called the cops on the FBI, and the reason is that when we were shooting the BB gun, I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I wasn't trying to break windows, but every time we missed trying to hit the street light, it would hit the window behind it. The window behind it was the FBI building in Binghamton, New York. Crazy. You can't make this stuff up. And why am I bringing this story together? Is because a lot of times we have good intentions. I knew at 10 years old that I would be successful, but I had downhill habits, and things that I was doing was not leading me closer. And I had this moment at 23 when I looked in the mirror and I said, I don't like the person I became. And I made a decision that day that I was going to go on a journey to learn, to develop, to grow as a leader. And that's what I'm going to start talking with you today. I'm going to talk about good intentions versus intentionally good. And I want to talk about the differences between the two, because there is a difference and most people are not aware of that difference. So on your screen, today we're talking about session 1. May 8th, we'll be going to session 2. Let's jump into this part here. So you guys can see on your screen.
Yes,
We
we
have,
can.
yep, you have good intentions, we have good action, and then we have intentionally good. And there's a huge difference between all three of them. You see, good intention says, I desire to be successful. I desire to have a business that's thriving. Good action says, okay, I'm going to do the things that I need to do. But intentionally good says, I'm going to get the results that I'm looking for. One is based on a desire, one is based on an action, and the other one is based on getting the results. That's what people that are intentionally good do. They get results, even though sometimes things get thrown at them that doesn't make sense. They figure out ways for the team to win. Good intention says someday. Good action says today. Intentionally good says every day. Every day I'm going to grow. Every day I'm going to learn. Every day our team is going to improve. Good intentions says it's a fantasy. Yeah, I would love to have this thriving organization. Good intentions builds a strategy, but intentionally good leaders build intentionality behind all the things that they do. They become intentional. How do we go to market? How do we develop our people? How do we grow as a leader? There's an intentionality. It's not left to chance. And I talk about that through the book. I talk about why it's so important for leaders to develop themselves and to develop the people on their team. And I just want to go to the second to last one. Good intentions is based on emotion. Have you ever said you get excited? We see this often December 31st when it's New Year's Eve and we're going into the New Year's Day. We see people excited. They have all these New Year's resolutions. They're super excited, and it's based on emotion. It's based on emotion saying, I want to do all these things. Intentionally good people, it becomes a lifestyle. It becomes a lifestyle. It's not based on emotion. It's based on, I built it into how I do things, that this is how I am. And I'm going to give you an example. I talk about it in the book, but I have to share it. Many years ago, I was at one of my close friends' bachelor party. This is right out of college, maybe 3 years after graduation. And we're in a hotel, and I see a gentleman walk by. It's a Captain Morgan person. He was dressed up in the Captain Morgan costume, right? And he's walking by, and it was very impactful because he was gliding. Picture being in the hotel, and the guy's walking. He's just gliding. You just see there's like this glide about him. So I said, "Sir, I love the costume." And this is what he said to me. Don't miss this. He said, it's not a costume, it's a lifestyle. Don't miss that. He said, it's not a costume, it's a lifestyle. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is being intentionally good is not a costume. You don't try to do it once in a while. It becomes a lifestyle of how you do it. How do you build being intentionally good into all areas of your life? So I want to jump in. I want to share with you these few things, these 5 steps to becoming intentionally good. And I know that Jenny is at the end, going to be opening it up for Q&A where we can kind of dive deeper into it. Here's the first one. Start small and believe big. The reason why starting small and believing big is important is because you don't start big, but you have to believe big. When I came out of college and I was just getting started in the business, I had a dream and a vision, but I was starting small. I remember in 2009 sharing it with a close buddy of mine. I tell the whole story in the book, but I tell my buddy Wakiki this dream that Danielle and I had to impact thousands and then eventually hundreds of thousands and eventually millions of students around the world with leadership and to develop them and empower them. And he said, well, what do you need? I said, oh, we need $30 million, Wakiki. At that moment, I came directly in contact with this. I thought that I needed to start big to believe big. And I want to share, people that are intentionally good, they start small, but they believe big. They never let go of the vision that they have, but they know that the vision that they have needs steps to start walking. And people that are intentionally good, they start walking. And they don't need to dream, they don't need to start big. And I don't know where you are in your business and in your career, but if you have a vision of where you want to go, keep believing big. Keep believing in the vision, but know that you need to start taking intentional steps. And that leads me to the next part, where you start walking and the vision becomes clearer. Think about that for a moment. Many of you on this webinar today, I'm sure, have a car and you drive. If you're up in Binghamton or Albany or towns like that, I'm pretty confident that you drive because you don't have a subway system to the extent that we have in New York City. So, but picture this for a moment. Just, I want to bring you to this experience. Picture you get in the car at 9 p.m. Sun's down, it's dark out. And picture you say, I'm not going to start driving because I can't see the entire trip to the supermarket. And the next day you say, I'm not going to drive because I can't see the trip to the supermarket. That's not the way it works. You put your headlights on, you can see 300 feet in front of you, and you start driving. And guess what happens? As you start driving, you could see 300 feet more in front of you. That's the power of the first two steps, where you don't have to start big. You could start small and believe big. You could start walking, and all of a sudden, the picture gets clearer. Things start coming into clarity. The things that you couldn't see in the beginning now start playing out. This makes sense? I'm just sharing with you from my heart because I teach these things through the leaders that we work with. We get the ability to work with CEOs of great companies. We get the ability to work with entrepreneurs and business leaders. And I teach them this stuff because a lot of times they need to see the whole picture. No, just start walking. It gets clearer. Let's jump into the next one. You start from your area of giftedness. I talk about this a lot throughout the book. So in this book, you'll see that this concept shows up in the book so many times. And this is the reason why. I am a huge believer that giftedness is what separates people. Giftedness is what makes people get a competitive advantage. Giftedness is the thing that allows your organization and your people to stand out from their very good competitors. And giftedness is a game changer because what it does is it allows you to perform at a higher level. And I'll give you an example. I don't know about you, but if you've ever tried doing something that you're not good at, you probably get drained and you probably don't perform at your peak. I often share this story. You have a tree, right? And at the tree, at the base of the tree is this fish. Let's call it a big, beautiful blue marlin, right? It's this beautiful marlin. And for anyone who loves fishing, a marlin is the trophy fish. It's like an amazing fish because when you catch it, it's so hard to catch. But when you catch it, it's a trophy fish. Now picture you have this big, huge, beautiful tree with this marlin trying to climb up it, and it's flopping at the bottom of it like this. And it's just getting frustrated. And all of a sudden, a squirrel jumps up onto the tree, climbs up the tree, goes up to the top, and the marlin says, I'm stupid. Leaders do that so often. They do that often because they think that they have to be good at everything. I'll give you this concept where when you start in a weakness, you start at poor, and the best you'll ever get is average. When you start in a strength or a giftedness, you start at average, and as you develop the skill set, you get the ability to become great. I like to say now world class. You get to be a world-class person in that area. That's why giftedness is so key to being intentionally good, because you can't reach your full potential. You can't reach the potential that you have inside if You're operating most of your time in weaknesses or in areas that you're not good in. Or if you have people functioning in areas that they're not good in. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect. You could ask my team. There's areas in our business that we have people that do things that they're not in their giftedness. It doesn't mean that you have to be perfect. It means that you have to be walking it out and working on refining it. Hey, let's jump into the next one. Build an intentional game plan. The reason why building an intentional game plan is so key is because an intentional game plan requires intentionality. And like going back to what I shared about the 5 frogs on a log, think about this for a moment. All 5, 5 frogs on a log, 4 decide to jump off. How many are left? There's still 5 of them because they decided to jump off. They weren't intentional with doing it. So I want to give you 5 areas as a leader that you should be intentional with developing. Okay? This is something you want to take down. We call it fishes. It's not going to show up on the screen, so I would take notes. We call it fishes. FISHS. Fishes. Financial capital, intellectual capital, social capital, human capital, and spiritual capital. I'll talk through each of them. I go deeper in the book, but financial capital is what are things that you're doing to build an intentional game plan of how you develop your financial assets? As a business leader, as someone that works for an organization, what are the things? Are you allocating money on a monthly basis? Are you putting budgets in place? How are you developing your financial capital? Then you go into intellectual capital. How are you developing your intellect? I'll share this. I speak to leaders often. They're saying, I'm reading books. I'm reading so many books. And I ask them what they're reading, and they're reading it in so many different areas. And I say to them, well, what's the area you're trying to refine? No, I'm trying to become good at everything. No. What's the area you're trying to refine? No, I want to become good at everything. I will tell you, I read books on 3 areas. That's it. 3 areas. Now, I watch the news to see what's going on locally, nationally, and globally. So I will look at the news. I'll read different news channels. I'll read different paper or websites, because I just want to catch what's going on locally in my local community, nationally in our United States, and globally, because it gives me a perspective. Local, national, and global. But I spend 15 minutes a day doing that. And then if there's something that catches my attention that says, I really need to know more about that, I'm going to spend time in there. That's part of my intellectual game plan. The second is I only read books in 3 areas. I read books on 3 things. I read books on leadership, I read books on business and entrepreneurship, and I read books on my faith. Those are the 3 books the 3 types of books. So when I'm trying to develop myself, I'm very clear that those are my 3 areas in intellectual capital that I want to develop. Now, those are mine. What are yours? Social capital, that's the S. In the social capital, if we're going to build an intentional game plan, what are the relationships that we have? And how do we intentionally add value to those relationships so that we can develop our social capital? So that we could add value to people. Next week we're gonna be talking about the power of adding value to people and how we have to value them to add value to them. Well, in your social capital, what's valuable to them so you could add value to them? In the human capital area, that's the H. So we have financial capital, intellectual capital, social capital, human capital. In the human capital is giftedness, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit more in a moment. Because in that area, we want to develop our skill set, and we want to develop those that we care about on our team and in our family in their area of giftedness. That's the human capital side of it. And then the last is the spiritual capital. Now, for me, as a person of faith, that's me spending time in the Word of God. That's me reading the Bible. That doesn't have to be for you. That's for me. I'm just sharing from my story. But it could also be traditions that you keep. And I go deeper into it in the book about what are some of those traditions. But it could be traditions that you keep that keep you grounded. You know, for me and my family, we gather Thanksgiving, we gather Christmas. These are spiritual capital traditions that we keep that are real close to my family and my wife and our families. So build an intentional game plan. And I'm just going to give you a part. If you want to have a good year, just think of this for a moment. If you want to have a good year, well, good years are broken up into good quarters. If you want to have a good quarter, those are broken up into good months. If you want to have a good month, those are broken up into good weeks. If you want to have a good week, those are broken up into good days. If you want to have a good day, those are broken up into good hours. And if you want to have a good hour, those are broken up into good minutes. It's powerful. Don't miss that. As leaders, we have to maximize our minutes. So our minutes lead to good weeks, that lead to good months, that lead to good years, that lead to good decades, that lead to a life of significance. That's being intentionally good. And it doesn't mean being perfect. I do not want you to walk away from this webinar saying, I have to be perfect. That's not what I'm saying. Start walking, start refining it, start working on it. And guess what happens? Day in and day out, you're going to get a little bit better every single day. Every day, you're going to get a little bit better. Good stuff, no? All right, let's jump into the last part. Begin the journey of becoming a lifelong learner. The reason why that's so powerful is I'm going to give you a mathematical reason why you want to grow every day. Okay? I'm going to give you mathematically why. So if you take the number 1, so I give you $1, and every day you don't get any growth on that dollar, the next day it's $1, and then the next day you get no growth on that dollar, it's still $1, and the next day it's $1. But if you take that number 1 and you get 1% change, now apply this to your leadership journey and potential. Every day you're getting a 1% growth because you're learning from the day before and you're applying it to the next day. At the end of a year, so 1.01 to the 365th power is 37.70. So remember, 1 to the 365th power is 1. 1.01 to the 365th power is 37.70. That's 3,770% growth by 1 degree shifts every day. That's the power of being intentional and being a lifelong learner. It's so powerful. I mean, it's the reason why I put this stuff in the book is because I knew that it impacted my life tremendously because I saw how far I got off in my earlier part of my life. And I'm seeing the impact of me being more intentional on a day-to-day basis and adding value to leaders like you. So I spoke about this concept of giftedness, and I would just want to unpack it a little bit more. In the book, I share where you can get the resource, and I'll share it on here on the next slide. But there's 3 things when it comes to giftedness. It's mission, it's competency, and it's style. And as you can see on the screen, you see where the mission, the competency, and the style converge. There's like a little area in there where the convergence occurs. That's giftedness. That's where your uniqueness shows up and where you could add the greatest value to your team, to your marketplace, to your customers, and to everyone that's around you. These 3 things are mission. It's what interests you. What are you motivated by? It's competency. What are you good at? And it's style. How do you and others perceive you? When those 3 things come together and you're able to do it well, it's magic. It's power. It's impactful because Great leaders are intentionally good, and you can't be intentionally good if you're not in your area of strength. So let me tell you what that looks like here. That's a graph that's part of our leadership report. And in our report, it breaks it down into these 9 areas. I'll share with you them, because picture now looking at it through this lens for yourself and for others that are on your team as you continue to grow your organization, right? So the first area is societal change. These are people that like to influence opinion. And as we went through on the previous slide, you see here we have mission, competency, and style. So the green is mission, the yellow is competency, and the red is style. So now look at that. Mission, competency, and style. So then you go to theoretical discovery. These are people who love data, going deep into data to pull out things, patterns, themes, rhythms that they're seeing to solve things, solve problems through data. The third is strategic decisions. These are people who can manage many different moving pieces to bring it all together and being synthesized properly. Then you have human development. These are people who like to help people, develop people. Then you have entrepreneurial challenge. These are people who like to take on risks and they're competitive. Then you have production efficiency. These are people that like things to run smooth. Artistic creativity. These are people who are innovative. Doesn't mean they have to be artistic, but they're innovative to come up with innovative solutions. Natural appreciation. These are people that they care about people and they like to keep balance among the people on the team. They're important people if they use the strength well. And then motivational energy. These are people who like to motivate others. So when you're building your team, when you're being intentional in building your strategy, how do you develop people? How do you develop yourself so you're looking at these areas to give you and your team the best chance of winning? And one last thing before we open up for some Q&A is I want to share this with you. One of the things I did, and I'm going to give you the background to the story. About 15 years ago, my sister-in-law was working with us for some years, and she came to me and she said, Chad, I love you and Danielle, my wife, tremendously. She said, I love you guys so much. She said, but I just don't like being behind a desk every day. She goes, I can't do it. It's so hard. She said, and I love what you're doing, but I can't do it. I know that part of what what you guys need from me is that. And because of that, we said, Kristen, we love you tremendously. And we just said, listen, we want to see you thrive and be excited about what you're doing. And so she said, I'll help you transition it. And 15 years ago, I created this document because I had to manage so many different moving pieces. At that time, we didn't have a big team. And that fast forward became our daily game plan, which you could see on the screen. And if you want, you could even download a sample of it by going on chadreyes.com and go to the book resource center. In that area, you can literally just download this for free. There's no strings attached. You can literally get the PDF version of it. But I created this so that I could be intentional. And it has a couple of areas. It has how many days left in the year, how many days left in the quarter, in the month, and then in the week. It has what are the things that I need to do in my power hour so I can get prepared mentally for the day. It has what are the top priorities that I need to focus on. And then on the bottom left, it has a very powerful tool that it talks about what was my lesson learned from today. Remember I spoke about being a lifelong learner? So in that area, what was my lesson learned from today? Who did I add value to today? Who can I add value to tomorrow and how? And then what am I grateful for from today? This is my daily game plan so that I can be intentional and be intentionally good, because I know that without doing this and not being intentional, and I do this every day. You could ask my wife, if you ever meet her and you ask her, I do this Monday through Friday. I do it every day, and I prepare for the next day to get my mind prepared for what I need to do. And I just want to encourage you to do the same, because there is so much power. The word is power in being intentionally good. Too many people go through life having good intentions, wanting to accomplish amazing things, wanting to see their businesses grow, wanting to see their families thrive, but they don't build intentionally good into it. And today, my friend, as we're coming to a wrap up of it, I just want to encourage you to be intentionally good. And there's one tool that I use, and I talk about it in depth in the book. So I would encourage you to get the book, because in it I talk about this pretty thoroughly. But it's date, time, location, accountability partner. Date, time, location, accountability partner. And what that does is, when you want to accomplish something, put a date on it, put a time of when you're going to do it so that it's in your calendar, because what gets calendared gets done. A location, where are you actually going to get that work done? Is it going to be in your office? Is it going to be in your home office? Is it going to be at the library? Where is it going to be? And then who's going to be your accountability partner to keep you accountable to it? The amazing thing is, when you add those 4 things into your intentional game plan, your probability goes up to 90% that you're going to get it done. Date, time, location, and accountability partner. So, hey, I hope I added value to you. I hope the things I shared with you encourages you. But I could tell you this, when I was earlier in my life, I was not intentional. I was not being intentionally good. I had all good intentions until that day when I looked in the mirror at 23 and I said, that's it, no more. I'm done. I'm done with this. I don't want to one day look back and literally say I had so much more to give this world. And I hope that what I'm sharing with you is sparking something in you. I'm hoping that what I share in this book will say it awakens the potential you have, so that one day you used all your gifts and talents to impact people positively. So, Jenny, I'm gonna stop there. I know we have some questions. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen too as well, so we can take some questions right now.
Yeah, and so I am going to drop your survey link into the chat. So
Perfect.
this is a survey from Lion's Pride. And if you want to tell them about what happens if they complete the survey, that would be fantastic, Chad.
Yeah, that's great. So by completing this survey, the survey is going to ask for your name and your email, and then it's going to ask you 3 questions. And these are the 3 questions, by the way. How would you rate today's conversation? What's your biggest takeaway? And are you interested in having a further conversation? But assuming you put your name and email and answer those 3 questions, my team will email you tomorrow a complimentary chapter of Good Intentions versus Intentionally Good. So you'll get the first chapter of the book complimentary. So I just would ask you to scan the QR code, or in the chat box, you can click the link and be able to answer that. And Jenny, while they're doing that, why don't we open up some questions?
Okay, yeah, and so I've put that into the chat there. So do go check the chat and make sure you can find that link if you are interested in this great offer from Lion's Pride. So our first question that we have, Chad, is what is the best way to deal with anxieties and uncertainties as a leader in the business world?
That's a good one. You know, in the world that we're living in, right? Especially, I mean, listen, I don't think anyone would disagree, Jenny, that we've had more change that has occurred in the last 4 years than we've probably have had in the last 20 or 30 years, right? And change naturally brings a feeling of uncomfortableness. It brings a feeling of overwhelmingness. It could bring some anxiety. The first thing that I would say to that question is embrace change. Change is not a bad thing. It's actually very normal. I just did a conference. I was out in Canada speaking, and I was out in Boston the New England area just in the last couple of days speaking. And I was talking about this very thing about change is normal. So when we look at change as normal, it actually takes our stress level down because most people don't like change. But the world that we're living in is changing so rapidly. And as a leader, we just embrace it. And I will say this, anxiety, now hear me out. And I'm not a doctor. So I'm not speaking at it from that lens. I'm speaking at it purely from a leadership lens. Typically anxiety, and I've dealt with anxiety, so I know what that feels like. Typically anxiety is because we're living in the past or we're too far in the future. So think about that as a leader. We need to have a vision for where we want to go, but we then need to come back to the present and start having good days, good weeks, good months, good years, good decades that lead to a life of significance. That's the thing I would say with anxiety is get clear on where you want to go, but don't live there. Come back to the present moment so you start building how you get there. And if you're dealing with the past and you're looking too much in the past, I have a chapter in the book that talks about making your purpose bigger than your problem, and it'll address that. Because it really is, it's really an important part because a lot of leaders deal with anxiety. But anxiety goes away, or typically goes away. I can't say definitively because there is medical conditions around it. But from a leader's anxiety level, I'm not talking about from a clinical leader perspective. The more we live in the present moment, the less the less we're stressed out about the future or the past. And that as a leader is something that I encourage leaders is be in the moment, be present, give your best. And when you go to bed at night, know that you gave your best so you don't have to carry it forward to the next day saying, I wish I would have done this. Every night I go to bed, Jenny, I go to bed with peace of mind because I gave everything I had inside for the day.
So we have an add-on to that question then. So what about burnout as an extension of, anxieties and things like that? How do you recommend dealing with burnout?
Burnout, in my opinion, in my leadership experience, burnout is from a manage of misexpectation. It's a manage of expectations. It's so what it is, and I know because I've done it, you think you're better than you are, so you put more things on your plate. And what happens is you don't get to them, so it adds more stress. And then the last part of it is I encourage leaders to calculate how much time they have in their business. So I'm going to give everyone right now an exercise to do. If you could take out your cell phone for a moment, don't look at your emails, be intentionally good and don't look at your emails. Just go to your calculator, okay? Go to your calculator. Take the amount of hours that you will work in a week and times it by the amount of weeks that you'll work in a month. So if you, as an example, if you are going to work, if you take 4 weeks vacation, then you have 48 weeks in the month, in the year. So I did 4 weeks vacation. So I did 65 hours a week times 48 weeks is 3,120 hours. This is how I manage burnout. I know the amount of hours that I'm willing to allocate to what I'm doing in my businesses. And then I say, I have these hours. How do I maximize these hours to get the greatest return for what I'm trying to accomplish? Now, if you're doing 40 hours and you're working 50 weeks in a year, that's 2,000 hours. What most people don't do is they don't calculate their time. And because of that, it leads to burnout. Because they're not realizing that they have an X amount of time within a year to use. Calculate your time, and then you'll start making better decisions because the things that were important yesterday won't become important because now you're saying, I only have these X amount of time, these X amount of hours in this year to accomplish this. People get burned out because they overestimate what they can accomplish in a day and they underestimate what they can accomplish in a lifetime.
So true. All right. Thank you for those excellent answers on those questions.
I'm
We
trying
had
my best.
we had one of our attendees comment that uh, some of some of the things that you're saying are very similar to mindfulness and meditation practices, as far as that ability to stay in the present moment, to stay
Yeah.
focused.
It,
So
it, it, it's so important, you know, I'm a big believer, right? To get myself focused, similar to what that person said, is I will go into my place is the sauna. So I have a sauna in my home. I've been blessed to be able to do that. And I have a sauna in my home. And that is my place, Jenny, that I get focused, I silence, you know, because my day is going so crazy. You could ask our team. I know you communicate with them. My calendar is jam-packed every day. But when I get home at night, I debrief, I do my daily game plan for the next day, and then I'll jump in the sauna for 45 minutes and I'll listen to some music, I'll focus, I'll read the word of God for me. But I get focused and I silence that voice that's always running. That as leaders, that's the hardest voice that you have to silence because it's always running. And I can say this, and I'm not saying this arrogantly. I don't have an inner voice that's running like that all the time. I have an intense calendar, but I have over the years figured out how to manage that so that I'm not feeling like I'm always on 24/7 all the time. And as a leader, it's so important for us to be intentionally good and figure out how to do that in our lives.
I may not have a sauna, but I have a hot shower, so
There you
it
go.
works. All right. Next question. How do you handle disgruntled employees who do not want to change or build better habits?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. I have a very simple philosophy. I give them every chance to grow, but once they don't want to grow, I give them every chance to leave the company, and I love them on the way out. It's a very powerful concept because their potential, if they're not trying to reach their potential, they're robbing the team of the team reaching their potential. And as a leader, I got to love our people, but I have to steward the relationships and all of my team members. My responsibility as the CEO of our companies is to help our companies thrive. It's not to make a person feel comfortable. So as a leader, our responsibility is to the collective team, not the individual person. And if they're not growing and they're resisting and they're challenging, give them some healthy, give them boundaries and ask them for certain things that you're expecting of them. But if eventually they say no, love them on the way out and even help them maybe on the way out so that they can go in an area that maybe would be beneficial for them, but maybe not for your company. But it's so powerful. Most companies do it and they don't do it in a way that honors the person on the way out. If they're not fitting in the team, that's okay, but just love them.
Thank you. I
You're
wanted to
welcome.
share another comment that was really good. This attendee said, "This seminar changed my perspective on being intentional and more focused. Every day we are bombarded with news and social media, other kinds of content, and that ability to intentionally quiet our minds is so important in our current environment." So couldn't agree more with
Yeah,
that.
yeah. It is so important, and if we're gonna reach our full potential, we have to figure that out. Especially, I'll give you an example, Jenny. 20 years ago or 30 years ago, it wasn't nearly as hard because you didn't have the level of information coming at us. But today, I mean, literally, I asked people to do the calculator. I bet you there were people that looked at their cell phone, looked at some news channel, went to their email, went to their text, maybe picked up a phone call because that is the level of intensity that's coming at us as leaders. And if we don't have a way to create some healthy boundaries around that, it can consume us.
Absolutely. So the person that asked the question about employees that don't want to change said, "Thank you for the answer. It's difficult when leadership in an organization doesn't want to let go of longstanding employees. That's another complication."
It
So
is.
yeah, do you have any comments about that?
Yeah, it is. I mean, listen, the best thing that I can do is give you, and I speak about it in depth in the book on role versus identity. As a leader, as the CEO, me being the CEO of all of our companies and our brands, my responsibility is for the company to succeed, and my responsibility is to empower people. When I'm speaking to someone, I have to speak to their role, not their identity. So when I'll give you an example, Jenny. If I'm talking to you and I say, Jenny, you're just not performing, you're terrible. I'm not speaking to your role. I'm talking to your identity. And when I talk to your identity, you're going to push back against it, because the truth of it is you're not terrible. In your role, maybe you're not performing well. So there, as a leader, we have to be able to break the two up and say, Jenny, and I'm just giving an example. I know that you do phenomenal work, so it's obviously not, this is not accurate with you, but I'm just saying in general so people can get a context here. Jenny, in the area that you're playing XYZ, you're not performing well there. You're the area that you're in, you're performing at a 5 out of 10. Now, I value you as a person and I deeply respect you as a person, but I can't, we need to work on this. And this is the areas that we're going to have to work on, 1, 2, 3. And unfortunately, if those don't change, then I'm going to have no other choice, but we're going to have to let you go. I deeply value you, but the role, you have to perform better in that role. That's the ability to separate the person from the role, because if we don't, they become two, they become one, and then that person says, you made me feel disrespected because their identity was impacted. A good leader has to do their best to work on speaking to the role that the person's performing, the person head of marketing, the person who's handling sales, the person who's handling operations or client customer relationships. Speak to the role, encourage them to move forward, give them a roadmap of how they could. If they can't, love them on the way out.
Okay, thank you. One of our participants said, sometimes though there are unions involved. So
There's what? Sometimes there's what?
There are unions involved.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Real life.
Real life, yeah.
Yep.
Sometimes there are unions and you got to navigate that. And we could talk offline about that one.
Okay, sounds good. So here, let's call this lightning round, because we have some really fantastic questions that I want to try and ask you. So like, give me your bite-sized answers, okay?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay. So the first one is, how to prepare yourself for leadership if you've never led anything, but you're just starting a business. Your top tips.
Yep. First is, you got to take the 4 phases of leadership. So the first one is, phase 1 is you got to lead yourself well. Second is then you lead you and one other. That's phase 2. That is one-on-one leadership. Third is team leadership, where if you led yourself well, you led one other person well, now you've earned the right to lead a team. And then last is, if you've done all that well, then you lead an organization. Most people want to lead an organization before they can lead themselves well. Lead yourself well, you get a greater opportunity to lead at a higher level.
Fantastic. So what do you plan for or how do you plan for what comes next if you or those on your team may not know what is about to come next? This person, their biggest concern about being a new and less experienced entrepreneur is the fear of wasting time because of taking too long to determine what the next steps are.
Yeah. Jenny, I'll say this, and I speak to this in the book throughout. It's fear of failure is one of the biggest struggles for a leader. Fear of failure is a huge struggle for a leader. So the greatest thing is if failure is not attached to your identity, you'll test stuff. When I was younger, I was very, very skeptical to try stuff, because if it failed, that meant I was a failure. Today, if something fails, I'm comfortable with it because I'm not a failure. The thing I tried was a failure. So as a young leader, make sure that you have a healthy relationship with failure, because your failure is going to create your success.
I love that. And I would also say, come visit us at the SBDC. We're great
There
at
you
helping people figure out those next steps and
go.
not wasting
100%.
time on things that might not work. I did put a link for us in the chat. So yeah, your local center would be a
I love
fantastic
it.
resource to work with. And
Yep.
just to remind everybody, we are no cost and high quality advising paid for with your tax dollars. So come visit
There
us.
you go.
All right.
I like that.
Okay. So at 71 years young, this person is feeling the most ambitious. I love that. How
I
do you
love it.
deal with ageism, though? I know I'm like,
Yes,
woohoo.
I
How can
love
this
it.
person deal with ageism, though?
So I'm going to share this. At 71 years old, you are in the prime of your life. Let me tell you why. At 71 years old, you've built years of relationships. At 71 years old, you have tremendous social capital. You have tremendous intellectual capital. You may have tremendous financial capital. It is the greatest opportunity because what happens at that point is you've amassed tremendous amount of all these capitals over your lifetime. In the book, there's a chapter I talk about learn, earn, and return. It's your greatest opportunity because you get to develop more people and you have so much wisdom to add to people's lives. I'll share this story, and maybe we end on this one, but I'll share this story that I heard someone share once, this message about where's the wealthiest part of the world? And it got me thinking, is it New York City? Is it Dubai? Where is it? And he said, the wealthiest part of the world is down the block from you. Well, what do you mean it's down the block? It's in your local cemetery. Because the wealthiest part of the world is the cemetery, because so many people take their visions, their dreams, the businesses, the books, all of the things that they had in their heart, and they bring it to the grave. And he said, my job is to walk into your life and help you rob the grave and die empty. And to you, my friend, being 71 years old, your brightest future is ahead of you because you have so much that you've amassed over the years. My challenge to you would be to rob the grave and die empty. Don't stop just because you reached an age. Stop when you no longer have life left in you.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. The comment just came in about how powerful that is. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So Chad, I've got one last question for you from our audience here. Okay. There are two. The first one, though, that applies to everybody is, what characteristic do you look for in an accountability partner?
I look for people that have character. I look for people that, Jenny, I want people that have character around me because it's contagious. Character is so key. Don't tell me who you are. Show me who you are. Just show me it. So when I'm looking for accountability partners, and I have them in my life, I want people that have already showed me that they have the character. Because if they have the character and they care about me, then they'll keep me accountable.
Last speed question. So this person would like to know, what is your specific goal, your huge goal that you're working toward?
Yeah. So my thing is, our coaching company, we're going to franchise it and have it in 1,000 locations around the globe. My goal is to empower tens of millions of leaders globally to reach their potential.
You're
And
very
maybe
clear on that.
you can help us
That's
do that.
fantastic. Yeah.
You asked the question, so I answered it.
Hey, well, yeah, this attendee wanted to know, and great response. All right. Well, we will wrap up for today then. Chad, thank you. This has been powerful, packed with great information. We've had lots of wows, great points. Thank you so much. I feel inspired in the comments coming in. So thank you again for joining us today. And remember, everyone, this is just number 1 out of 7. We've got a great few weeks ahead of us. And so please come back. We'll be back together next week, May 8th. And yes, a question about the recording, I will be sending that out to you in a follow-up email. So you can look for that in your inbox in the next few days. So you can go back over things that Chad has shared today and ponder on them more. And I'll also put the link for that survey for you.
And pick up
that,
a copy of the book.
yeah, so Chad's got that free chapter if you do that survey. So you have a way to read part of that book without any cost. And
There
I
you
will
go.
put that in the follow-up email as well. And again, thank you for the fantastic questions today, everyone. You are so appreciated, and we hope to see you back for 6 more sessions of great content. All right. If you have a moment to fill out our survey after, we always love getting your feedback. If you have a couple minutes to give us, as the NYSBDC, some feedback on today's session. And with that, I will end things. Chad, thank you.
Jenny, thank you guys for putting this and hosting this and investing in leaders. You know, often I say this, that a great partnership divides the work and multiplies the impact. That's what we just did here today. We divided the work and we multiplied the impact. We got your network of people to add value to them so that then they could add more value to their clients, their customers, and their community. Thank you. Appreciate you and Simon so much.
It's our pleasure. Okay. Bye till next week, everyone.